All right, we are going to get started. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are. I am Grace Chen from Quantic, and I'm here to welcome you to our almost end of year Quantic conversation. And today we're going to be focused on reimagining leadership in the workplace. I'm super excited because we haven't done one of these in a little bit of time, and this will be probably our last one for 2023. So definitely stay focused and tuned in. We want to see this time as both a time to reflect on this past year, 2023, and also consider new ideas for 2024. I want to make sure I take a moment to thank our amazing producer, Kelsey Duggan, who is behind the scenes. She always makes these conversations possible, and without her, it really isn't possible. So thank you so much, Kelsey. Now, today's session will be right around 45 minutes long, and it is recorded. So if you need to step away and come back, or you just want to watch later, feel free. The recording will be at the same exact link that you're at right now. If you're interested in learning more about Quantic's MBA or EMBA, executive MBA, we will have a handy QR code that will be on the top left corner of your screen throughout the session. And feel free to share it with your family and friends as well who might be interested in Quantic. You can learn more about us by going to the website. Now, for every one of you who are joining, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I saw that we had a lot of signups for this event, so that means the topic is something you really want to hear about. We would love for you to interact with us in a couple of different ways. First one, as we always do in our virtual sessions, no matter what we're doing, is tell us where you're joining in from and how's the weather by you. Maybe add that in as well. And just in general, throughout the session, yes, it's going to be a conversation between myself and our guests, but we very much want to include you into that conversation as well. So when you're hearing something that resonates with you, go ahead and comment in the box. Maybe you're going to be chatting with each other, but this is an inclusive conversation that is meant just as much for you as it is for us to be holding. And by the way, if you do have a question for our panelists, go ahead and put it in the comment box, and then we will see what we can get to as we move through the session. So again, our topic of discussion today is reimagining leadership in the workplace. And I want to take a moment to break things down a little bit so we can build it back up as we go through this panel discussion. Whether you are a leader, a manager, an individual contributor, each of you plays a pivotal role in shaping the dynamics of your workplace. Today, I invite you to reflect on the three words: reimagining, reimagine, leadership, and workplace. How do these concepts resonate with your role and your experiences? How do they influence your vision for the future, regardless of whether you, regardless of where you stand on your organizational hierarchy? So, what do these three words mean to you? We're going to be joined today by two distinguished experts who will challenge and expand our understanding of leadership in a workplace that's constantly evolving. This discussion is an opportunity for all of us, myself included, irrespective of our roles, to redefine, reimagine leadership in a world full of emerging possibilities. Let's engage actively. Let's think as we listen, and even beyond what we know right now, what our own roles are, and envision a future where leadership is a collective journey. And that's what's so great about these conversations. We're in this together right now. Now, let me tell you a little bit about our two guests before they come on screen. We have Berthine Crèvecoeur West, who is a transformative force in diversity, equity, and inclusion. As CEO of Westbridge Solutions and a certified diversity executive, Berthine's expertise in organizational transformation will provide deep insights into evolving leadership dynamics. She knows what she's talking about, I promise you. And joining her also is Rouven Behge, a strategic advisor with a rich background in leadership and operational efficiency. His global experience in managing complex operations gives him a unique perspective on harnessing human potential in leadership roles. Their combined expertise will undoubtedly enrich our conversation as we reimagine leadership in the workplace. So now I'm going to pause, and I want to invite our two guests onto the screen to join me. Boop, there you are.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome, both of you. Thanks for joining me. The more I kind of go through my script and think about what I'm saying, the more excited I am to have this conversation. Audience, true story. Rouven and Berthine do not know each other. This is actually the first time they're sharing space together as well. But that to me is what's going to be exciting about today's conversation, because I know the two of them well enough to know that combined, you're going to get a fantastic set of insights. So thank you both for saying yes to the session. And I know you're both passionate about your work, and I think that is a common thread between the two of you. So let me pause for a moment, and Rouven, let me give you a chance to say hello to the audience, and then Berthine.
Yeah, thank you. And also thank you for the invitation. I'm glad to be here. So yeah, my name is Rouven. I'm based in southern Germany, just at the Swiss border. I've spent 15 years in logistics and supply chain in various functions. And also I have worked in more than 20 countries and gathered insights from there. And I'm passionate about leadership, about processes, and about human potential. So yeah, excited to be here.
Excellent. Thank you, Rouven. And then over to you, Berthine.
Hello, Grace. I'm delighted to be here with you and Rouven. So thank you to you and Quantic for creating this space for us to share this really important conversation and what I know will be a fun and hopefully an insightful conversation. So I am the Chief Executive Officer at Westbridge Solutions. I am also a certified diversity executive and a business strategist. So what else can I say? I can't wait to dive into the conversation. So shout out to everybody on LinkedIn and especially the Quanticers out there for joining us today.
Excellent.
In Atlanta.
I like it, Quanticers. It's either we have different words and different names for our Quantic students and alumni, but it's always fun. All right, excellent. So thank you both again. And we're going to go pretty much right into things because our time is not incredibly long, but there's a number of topics that we want to be able to touch on while we're talking today. So I want to frame our time a little bit together, both for audience and then for the three of us on stage here. The buckets of thought that we want to touch on today, obviously within the umbrella topic of reimagining leadership, would be leadership, of course, work environment, what leading in the era of AI and emerging technologies means, and then also human potential. So we want to kind of hit all of those buckets and weaving in and out of them and through the questions. And so I'm really excited. I think we're going to, in 40 minutes, we're going to come out the other side with some really interesting insights. So for both of you, Rouven and Berthine, I have a question. In your own words, how would you define leadership in the modern workplace? Like even when you just hear that phrase, what does that make you think of? Why don't you go first, Berthine?
For me, leadership in the modern age, that means something very specific that can be applied very broadly. So for me, a modern leader is one that is both a strategic and a critical thinker, but they are dedicated to aligning the intent and the impact of their organization, and they empower their teams to do that.
Excellent. All right, and then over to you, Rouven. How would you expand on leadership in the modern workplace?
I think for me, modern leadership is first and foremost acknowledging that leadership is a particular skill set, and you could almost say it's a particular profession. So I think especially in a modern workplace, it's no longer, I'm an engineer and on the side, with the remaining 3.5% of my time, I do some leadership stuff. But if you really want to excel and if you really want to be good at that and, lead your organization towards your goal, then I think the first step really is to acknowledging that it's a distinct profession with, mindsets, tools, technology as well, and everything that comes with it. Yeah.
Okay, that's a great start, and kind of setting the frame a little bit for the audience. Um, I feel like I'll speak for myself for a moment, but I feel like, obviously the word leadership it's everywhere. I mean, it's so generic at the same time, and it's ubiquitous, and we all think about it, and we all experience it, whether we are being managed by someone or we are managing other people. But the idea of leadership and really understanding what that means and what it takes is always feels like a moving target. Um, so we'll keep that in mind. And for me, I was thinking about the same thing. When I think of leadership in the modern workplace, I'm thinking about what are the strategies and practices that our leaders have that will have a direct impact on the things that are happening on the ground, I guess you could say, in the workplace environment, the structure and the culture. And there are um, sometimes we kind of disconnect the two. So one more quick question to follow up on what you both just shared. Can you think of a time in your own career where you realized there was a difference between a leader and a manager? I'll start with Rouven first.
You mean a leader or a manager that I observed, or
Yeah, like
just in
someone
general?
who like really who leads, has that skill set and that profession like hat, or just gets through the job, just does their job day to day.
Yeah, I think many times throughout my career, I've observed these differences. And, to make it very simple, for me, manager is something you put on an org chart and on your business card. But leadership, I always have to smile when people say, when I get into this position, then I can exhibit, strong leadership skills and so on. But leadership is not about formal authority at all. And even if you are in that position of formal authority, it's not about formal authority. It's about, influencing human behavior with a long-term mindset and in a way that contributes to the organization's performance. So I've seen this many times. People who understood their job being a manager, and that's all fair, because you have to keep things within a certain framework, and it's not to say that it's unnecessary to be a manager. That is also things you need to do.
Right.
But yeah, you don't need to be a manager to lead in that sense.
Absolutely. And I love the phrase formal authority. And I think this is very liberating also for those of anyone who may not have a formal title, but are definitely leaders in their organization as well. So Bertine, do you have anything to add to that?
I do. Rouven and I are aligned in our thinking. A manager, and I've seen this so many times, countless times, quite honestly, where you have, a manager doing their job, and there's nothing wrong with that. Be it placing widgets into, the widget machine, whatever that may be, or dictating to their team what needs to be done and making sure that all of that is taken care of. That is a position that is necessary. But leadership, really, I do firmly believe that it is a mindset, and all of us are leaders. But we need to develop those skills, because we lead ourselves first before we can lead a team and before we can lead an organization. We do this in very small and incremental ways, but I think when we adopt the formal term leader, we need to, and this is why I love this conversation, we do need to reimagine and reframe what a leader actually looks like. It can be somebody at any level of the organization. It can be a staff member. It can be someone from the managerial sector as well, and it can also be an executive. What leadership means to me, and where I've seen it be the most powerful, is when it creates taking that mindset of that particular leader and creating a shared culture and commitment and trust to the company and to its mission. So for me, leadership is a way of thinking rather than doing necessarily.
That's perfect. I love that. And that may be, audience, this may be our first reframing or reimagining right there is what do each of you think of when you think of leadership, and what does that mean to you? So hold that thought. Another question for both of you. And let's see, what strategies, I'm glad you just mentioned culture, it's perfect. What strategies have you found effective in fostering collaborative culture within a team or organization, either in your own experience or what you've witnessed? And why don't we have Rouven go first?
I think, when it comes to strategies, there's so many different topics and routes you could explore and so on. But for me, the foundation of everything that a collaborative work environment can achieve is building trust. In my experience, that's the number one factor. Not only having some people on the team trusting the leader, but also just creating that safe environment that then in the second stage can foster innovation and encourage people to be themselves, to try things out. And actually, I have to say, so for me, this transformation, taking a group of people who don't know each other and transforming them over time into a team who trusts each other and who works together and who helps out each other, that is one of the most net positive contributors to my personal energy levels, because I enjoy so much seeing that transformation and seeing also people grow and develop and learn in such an environment. So to make it short, I think trust is the number one thing for me, the number one strategy, if you will.
Okay, so that's a key ingredient. And then over to you, Berthine. What have you found or seen as being important or effective in fostering collaborative culture?
I think one of the things I've found that can dictate strategy from a leadership perspective is knowing as a leader that you don't know everything, acknowledging that and understanding that that is a part of leadership, not knowing everything, because then you either will find the team that knows the different components that will add to the value of the whole collective, or for those that are emerging, you can empower them with the information that they need and really ask them what they think. And I always think about Nelson Mandela's father. I think I mentioned this to you, Grace, just, in the green room a while back, where he was a chieftain and he asked the opinions of everyone else before he rendered his own. And the beauty of that is that you'll get to know what everyone is thinking, but also their ideas may be better than yours because your lane of brilliance is to lead, but we cannot lead a team that we do not know, nor do we understand. And we can't have their trust if we're not open to hearing their suggestions and understanding how that may add value to the whole. To that end, I really think when we have that level of trust that is built, when people trust the leader, they will then feel empowered to trust each other. Because if the leader trusts me, and then Rouven trusts the leader, well, then Rouven now will trust me. Right? And this is how we build upon each other's strengths and skill sets. So I think the first rule of leadership should be to acknowledge that we don't know everything, and that's not our job.
And that's listening to the both of you, I actually could see where I like to use the word Venn diagram. I like to see where you both overlap, and it is very much a collective experience. I mean, when we talk about collaborative culture, obviously it already suggests that there are multiple people involved, but it's like this energy feeding cycle where if our leaders start off, I guess, vulnerable and honest about and also not being first, then creating that space so that everyone who's in the organization or team can just actually step in and visually and seeing other team members transform and be energized, I think is really powerful for even someone just watching and listening. Kind of what you were saying, Rouven. Another little question to piggyback off of this idea And what might have you seen or witnessed in, let's say, your client's world or yours, that it's a signal? Like, how do I know that I'm working in a collaborative culture? Because we're all so head down in our work sometimes, and I would say a lot of us work in, pretty good environments probably, but is there a signal? Are there certain things that would happen in a truly a stronger collaborative culture that you wouldn't see in every other organization, like actions or words from employees, let's say, for instance? So is there a signal that you've ever heard about or witnessed that you're like, they've got it, there's trust there, there's a collaborative culture? Either one of you, if you can think of anything.
I'll jump in. I would say cross-pollination. That is, that shows you that trust exists. And what I mean by cross-pollination is, if we're taking a manager as an example of the leader in the moment, the team members one team member doesn't need to go to the manager to ask for something that somebody else would be able to help them with. So they can just go to that person that can help them. And so what that does is really increase efficiency, increase productivity, and it allows each person to operate in their particular lane of brilliance, again, adding to the success of the whole. And if we're talking about organizational culture, that leads to a more positive organizational culture. And that would lead me to see, especially when I think about my clients, that would let me see that they trust one another. They understand, to your point about being vulnerable, admitting that we need help, where they're not siloed. That is one of the biggest problems that I tend to see when employees are siloed. They really can't function effectively. And what that means for the business, once it affects productivity, is that when we're talking to the CEO, they're not going to understand why a company that can be successful and financially lucrative is not. You're losing revenue, and you would lose people power as well. So those cross-pollinating moments are fertile ground for a really successful company and a very healthy and thriving organizational culture.
I love that. It's very much about the people and individuals feeling safe and that they can trust what's going on, but it actually will increase and improve productivity as well. So there's definitely a bottom line that every leader should be thinking about when they want to create this kind of culture and space. Would you like to add anything, Rouven, to that thought?
Yeah, just maybe one thing. Looking at a specific indicator or something, that can help you judge how collaborative your work environment is. I think looking at hesitation is a way to judge where you are, because collaborative environments are environments where there are no goal conflicts. So people move into one direction. There's absolute clarity. There's no fear of stepping into somebody else's area, and a lot of elements along these lines. There's different communication, and I think great collaborative environments where there's trust and where all these elements are in place, they also move a lot faster than environments where you're never sure, whatever you do, somebody might not like it or whatever. And yeah, just looking at hesitation also in meetings. I fully agree to what Berthine said about the sequence of who speaks when. And the most influential person should probably speak last. But also there, if you're in a meeting and you're asking a specific question and you have a collaborative, trusting environment, then there will be a lot of ideas coming up, and many people will dare to speak up. Whereas if you're in an environment where collaboration does not fully work as it should, then you might have people looking around nervously and maybe looking at the boss, and these types of hesitations, they might be signals or indication that something, there's a lot of friction somewhere.
I love that. I really, really do. These are actually really small moments that exist in our day to day. You know, think about all the meetings that every one of you attends, all the conversations, the Slack messages, many decisions being made or ideas being thrown out there, and how many times we might have these hesitations that Rouven's talking about. Do you say, do you actually say what you think is going to be best for the situation, or do you have to wait? Or there's so much psychology that happens here on a very micro level, but that compounds very quickly. And so I thank you so much, both of you, for answering that question. Now I'm going to have one question for each of you specifically. And so I'm going to start with Rouven. So we're going to pivot a little bit now and think about technology, because it's in our face, it's in our lives, it's literally everywhere, and that's something very top of mind for every single one of us here. And you and I had some conversation. We had a conversation about this too. What is a key lesson you've learned about balancing technology integration with maintaining strong human-centric focus in leadership? So the balance of the two, moving forward with the technology piece, but making sure that you don't lose sight of the human aspect of things. What can you share with us in that realm?
So I think one key element that you would have to understand as a successful leader is the role of technology. And you said balancing it. I would say there's a clear hierarchy. So in my view, the purpose of technology is to make humans superhuman. And the purpose of technology is not, it's not a human task or a human activity to, cover up some, insufficient functionality or whatever. And I think in the consumer space, there's a lot going on, and you have great workflows and so on. But probably many people know that in the business side of technology and software, it's oftentimes not that beautiful. And I just think as one key element, you would have to keep in mind or ask yourself the question, am I working for the tool, or is the tool working for me? And that balance, there has to be a surplus of the tool is working for me. Otherwise, it's not worth it. And then, of course, I could, I mentioned the term superhuman beings. So if you'd like, I can also expand on why we even need superhuman beings. But yeah.
Oh, actually, please talk about that a little bit. How can I, Rouven, become a superhuman, super grace?
Super grace. Yeah. So just to take one step back real quick, I think one huge driver in this whole change is demographic change. And I just run you through a quick through some numbers. So by 2030, all baby boomers will be age 65 or older. That means within 10 years, give or take, more than 500 people will leave the workforce globally. And you really have to think about that, because I think in the US, one number that I read one day was 10,000 people a day turn 65. That's unbelievable numbers. And in the past, the way it worked basically was, you had these people working for years or decades in your company, and then they left, and you've found out maybe that they took some, critical expertise, knowledge with them. And then you brought them back on a consultancy contract, or, it was already expensive and not the ideal situation because they could write their own paycheck, essentially. But with this generation, you're unlikely to make that happen, because I think the unretirement rate is like 2% or so. So they want to enjoy life, and you won't get them back, even if you throw money at them. So that brings the challenge that for every person who leaves, you might have only, depending on your industry, depending on your company, you might only have for every 5 people, you might only have 1 stepping up. So that means that creates the gap where we absolutely need technology. And that's why I see new technology as an opportunity rather than a threat in the sense of AI will replace us all. And to give you a concrete example from my logistics background, so like a decade back or so, if you were a proficient, operations agent or dispatcher, you had like three physical desk phones on your desk. On one phone you were on a call with a trucker. On the other one, you probably had your customer, and then your third one for talking to a subcontractor and so on. And that was how technology, what technology allowed people to do during that time, and they used that technology. Going forward, with AI and a lot more other technologies, people will become even faster, even better at what they do. And here we come back to our topic of our today's conversation, and that is leadership. Because leadership in that environment where a few experts are supported by a massive amount of tools and technology, you want to have these people, number one, knowing what they do, but also you want them to care. So you absolutely have to take care of them, probably better than ever before. And I believe that you will see even stronger shifts in the coming years. And companies or leaders who understood this scenario and who understood this situation, they will absolutely thrive. And companies who neglect this trend and who just disregard it, they will have a very difficult time, to the point where it will threaten their existence.
There's a lot to take in right now, even as you're talking about, when you use that was a great example with the phones, just thinking about basically how things have been done. In order for us to look forward, we have to look behind us also to see how things have been done. And are we at this crossroads of understanding what these trends are that are larger than me as one person, but definitely going to impact me as I continue to work in the world. So that's really so much to think about there. And I'm going to switch over now to Berthine. I want to ask you a question, and it's going to feel like, this is going to be your area of expertise, and then we're going to kind of find the space where both of your insights in your particular areas of expertise are going to be gathered together. Can you share, Berthine, a specific instance or something you can think of where implementing DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives led to transformative change in an organization?
Oh, absolutely.
Right up your wheelhouse. Right up your alley.
How much time do we have? Well, first I would say, so to answer your question, I would say that the occasion where DEI has instituted a positive change for a company, for culture, has been to actually flip DEI on its head. So the way that I operate in this space and in life, honestly, is to go against the traditional paradigm, because data has shown us that it does not work. When you lead with diversity, so what? You have a group of different people in a room or an organization. What is the purpose of that other than being different? How are you going to harness the power of that? So one of the strategies I always, I just live by it really, is to lead with inclusion. Because when you lead with inclusion, you create inclusive environments for people, inclusive workspaces for people, be that in the digital space or in the in-person space. Then you can start to create equitable policies, practices, and procedures. When you have equitable practices, policies, and procedures, then you create an accountability system for leaders and everyone that follows the leader, if you will, to tap into and to use as not only their strategic guide, but their purposeful guide for being at that organization. And when you do that, then you create belonging and you create community, and that leads to organic diversity, not diversity that is performative. And when anything performative is done within the DEI space, it is destined to fail. Data has shown us time and time again. I love data. Grace knows this about me, and the numbers do not lie. It's devoid of our feelings, but data is what we need to help bridge that intent that we have for a truly diverse workforce. But there's a gap between the intent and the impact. So the data helps us breach that. And when we follow the data, we see historically where we've been, so we can learn from mistakes that we might have made in the past or stick to what has worked, right? And then once we're able to see that, we can firmly have our feet planted in a realistic space, knowing where we are from a people standpoint, an operational standpoint, an organizational standpoint, and then that will serve as the catalyst for what decisions we can make in the future. So while it's not a guarantee for success, it positions us to be successful because now we're not just saying, oh, let's just have people here. And one of the examples I like to use is people who are neurodiverse people. So neurodiverse people are, they're a range of people with neurodiverse conditions such as autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dyscalculia, a variety of conditions that people live with, oftentimes are invisible to those who are not familiar with those conditions. And so with autism in particular, I would say 15 years ago, the rate of autism was I believe 1 in 8. The rate was, all right, I'll have the numbers for you a different time, but the rate was such that out of 100 children, I believe about 8 were born who are on the autism spectrum. And so in that short 15-year time frame, now that rate has increased exponentially. And this data is just for boys. Girls have not been measured to the extent that boys have been. But now, 15 years later, it's more so 25 to 30 births for boys in the United States, I should say. So what that shows us is, this is so important to know, the rate of autism is not increasing, it's being diagnosed more readily because we have the technology to do that. What does that mean for business and diversity? It means now that we have this data, what we can do is understand, by doing our due diligence and asking and assessing what a person who is neurodiverse needs in the workplace to make them more comfortable, thus more efficient, more productive, more proactive. And when that's done, that directly ties into a business's KPIs, if you will, and ROIs. I don't want to throw out all these acronyms, but it directly ties to how successful the business will be, because now we created an inclusive space, we created equitable policies and procedures. That person feels a sense of belonging, and thus what's going to happen is now the company is poised to attract this new demographic of highly skilled a highly skilled workforce, and that's going to lead to a more profitable company. So that's how all of that ties together.
And if you don't know what ROI and KPI is, you can get an MBA. I'm just kidding. Wow, I'm so funny. All right. I actually do have a question for both of you. Actually, listening to both of you, thank you. It's because this all ties together. Everything, every single one of us has worked in multiple organizations. We work. Most of us are working in one right now, and everything that you both, Rouven and Berthine, are talking about, that exists in our organizations or doesn't exist, or just varying degrees of those concepts of what. This is part of the idea of reimagining leadership in the workplace, because it's about getting the right people on the bus. It's about hiring. It's about looking at the workforce. in a certain way. So maybe I want to ask a question about workforce and how organizations and leaders look to the kind of workforce they want and need in their organizations. Do you have any maybe advice for those who are hiring and those who are creating strategy for how their organization is going to be structured? Do you have something that you want people to keep in mind and maybe even reimagine as what they think are going to be good fits or really productive members of their organization? So that's the question, I think. What would you want leaders to reimagine as far as bringing the right people into their organization? We'll start with Rouven. I know, I threw you a curveball.
No, that's totally fine. I'm just thinking there's so many elements you could talk about, to just decide on one. Probably, one of the obvious one is, bringing and, looking at Berthine, bringing diversity of thought into your organization. That's critically important if you don't want to, have an organization that agrees to everything, but you go 200 miles an hour into the wrong direction. But then also, there is, probably organization design is something that, has to relate to the company strategy and the company goals. And it's difficult to just give one answer, for that full topic. But probably like one thing to keep in mind is, people excel when they love what they do. So, keeping in mind that, there's no job where you have 100% share of things that you love. It just doesn't exist, right? But to get this share as high as possible for everyone in your workforce, that will definitely or would definitely make a difference. To stay on that, meta level.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It sounds so simple, but I don't think it is actually that simple to make sure the majority of your organization, they each individually love what they do, but also collectively as an organization. So thank you for that wisdom. Berthine, any thoughts on this?
Yes. I share Rouven's statement about being goal oriented. So I like to start with the goal first before we even think about, the type of people that we'd like to add to the workforce. So what is the goal of the organization? Is it in alignment with the organization's vision and mission? And so once we have that established, I would then say one of the best strategies I've seen when considering and reimagining what your workforce can look like is to really look at non-traditional pathways. We tend to think only Ivy League and nothing else, right? But there are brilliant, highly skilled people in schools that are non-Ivy League and sometimes not in school at all. They are different ages. You may find, and I find this to be a great pair for organizational success. You have somebody that has a lot of foundational wisdom and knowledge that Rouven was mentioning that doesn't need to be hired out as a consultant for 10 times the salary later on, right? You keep that person, you pair them with a younger millennial or a Gen Zer, and then you'll have that technological know-how. And so when you put these two together, there's a powerhouse that is created. And what does that do? That's going to really boost your workforce in ways that are unimaginable. And what that does is create a more agile workforce and a more innovative one. And so for the workforce that is that agile and innovative one, when we get back to talking about embracing AI and all technological advances in general, that company will be more poised to do so because its workforce is already, so varied, so diverse, if you will, just from generational diversity, right? And so, and I mentioned diversity because so often people don't see the importance of what it brings. People think it's just on the face, racial diversity that is important, but there's so many other components of diversity that we can measure and really leverage to our benefit as individuals, as a collective, and as an organization. It only serves to drive us to better places and spaces. It makes an organization more competitive when they have a workforce that is so agile and so innovative. And again, when you're speaking to executives about the bottom line, that organization is going to come out on top and really ensure their own sustainability in a time of ever evolving technological change.
Yeah. I am so glad I asked that question. So much there. It's almost now, as we're coming to the end of our conversation, it's not an option to reimagine leadership in the workplace. I feel like it's a necessity. it's a must do, and and there's multiple facets to it, from operations to technology to inclusion to just like literally taking out our concepts and changing the paradigm of what we understand to be what's actually effective. Last question for both of you, and it is, let's see, in order, I guess, for all of us to evolve and adapt into the future, this is for leaders, how does a leader need to reimagine their role? And I know you've both touched on different aspects of it, but if you could just kind of, in one clean statement, what do leaders need to do as far as reimagining their role into the future? And we can start with Berthine and then Rouven.
Well, I would say an internal SWOT analysis. First, reimagine what a leader can be. Think of, assess your own strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Oftentimes, the threats are from within. Leaders tend to deal with imposter syndrome just like anybody else on a daily basis. We walk in as the experts, and sometimes we're thinking, they're asking me, what do I know? Somebody must know more, right? But when we really are able to take hold of those things, take stock of those things, understand that a leader comes in many forms, shapes, sizes, thought processes, and we are one of those, right? Everybody can be one of those, but we need to do a SWOT analysis internally. Then we need to really think about, when we're looking at those weaknesses, what can we do to lessen those weaknesses, and what opportunities are available to help strengthen our leadership skills? Being a leader is a holistic experience, and it's one that is never ending. One day you can't just say, oh, I'm no longer a leader. Once you are a leader, the journey is the minute you take your breath and decide to really embrace that path. It is a beautiful journey that is filled with potholes. It really is. We're going to fall, we're going to stumble, but what truly determines a leader, in my opinion, is knowing our weaknesses, but capitalizing on our strengths, building consensus, building trust, building community, and really passing the mic when it's necessary.
Yeah. And maybe SWOT analysis. I almost knew that you were going to say something about SWOT analysis, because I was thinking about this morning. And maybe through that process, leaders themselves can actually love what they do even more, and which will hopefully translate and pass on to the rest of the organization. All right, Rouven, how about you? What does a leader need to reimagine as far as their own role?
I think one critical element is to assess their own level of commitment. And when I say commitment, you can have various shapes and forms of leadership. You can be a formally assigned leader of a business unit or whatever, or you can be a change agent during a large project, without a formal title, whatever. That's all leadership. But essentially, what leadership to me is in the workplace now specifically is influencing human behavior in a way that it contributes to a specific goal. to the company's goal, to whatever, and having fun while you're at it. If you should have some fun as well. But what that actually means is influencing behavior to contribute to a specific goal. That also means as a leader, and the more you commit to that role, the more you have to be whatever your organization needs to move forward. And that goes back a bit to the point that I mentioned earlier. It is a profession to have that capacity, to have the tools, to have the mindset, to know yourself, first of all, and to be able to lead yourself before you can lead anyone else. But having really that capacity, and also acknowledging that there are some downsides. Like, for instance, leadership can be and will be at certain points very, very lonely. And you will have to you will have to be able to deal with that. There's techniques and ways around that, and you can engage in a community, or have a coach or a mentor, or there's so many things you can do. But defining your level of commitment and how far you want to go into that leadership role, and also acknowledging that that's not the only path that exists in this world. And probably going forward, when you mentioned the future, it will also be much more a leadership task to create expert paths, so that not everyone feels forced to go into a leadership role. But I could keep talking about this for another hour, so I'll stop here.
You know what? Like a good show, we will end on while we're still wanting more. So, okay, and so that is the time that we have today. Audience, as we wrap things up and wind down right now, and if you can, tell us in the comment box, what's one takeaway for you today? What's an idea or thought that came out of this discussion that is going to stay with you for a little while? We'd love to see that. And then Berthine, Rouven, absolute pleasure. I knew it was going to be great, and never disappointed when I bring the right people onto this little bus here. And the session has, I guess for me, the takeaway, earlier I said, it's not an option to reimagine. It's a must if we want to be in a thriving career. And I would say it's even just individually as well. I need to, as an individual, reimagine what I want, and what I see myself, and what value I add to wherever I am, whatever organization, or even just for myself, because as we keep moving and evolving to the future, all of it is, there's so much possibility. So it requires really changing how we think. And of course, at a leadership and organizational level, it's a must. Thank you so much, everyone in the audience. Thank you for joining us. We wish each of you a wonderful, relaxing, and reflective close to your 2023. And we will see you at our next event. And I will say, class is dismissed. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.